Well, good morning. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, colleagues. Would you like me to proceed, Chair? Yes, okay. I'm here today to present SB 14, a measure that would position California state agencies and operations as a leader for waste reduction and the circular economy. I would like to begin by thanking the committee staff for their work on this bill, and I am accepting the committee amendments. Every day, California sends 12,000 tons of plastic to landfills, enough to fill 219 Olympic-sized swimming pools. That's every day. Across the United States, only 5 to 6% of plastic was recycled in 2021. Waste that isn't sent to landfills often ends up polluting communities and the environment. Single-use plastics are among the most extractive, wasteful, and harmful products in our society. One way to tackle the problem and reduce the enormous flow of waste is to move to a circular economy, which focuses on reusing and recycling products. SB 14 requires state agencies to walk the talk to advance our recycling and source reduction goals. It also leverages the state's considerable purchasing power to support recycling markets by requiring that all state contracts for single-use plastic bottles moving forward must be for bottles that are at least 90% post-consumer recycled content. SB 14 puts state agencies at the forefront of the circular economy, ahead of the statewide goals for post-consumer recycled content in plastic bottles that was established in AB 793 from Ting in 2021. As a reminder, there are many options to single-use plastic beverage containers, such as cartons and aluminum that people can easily use, as well as pitchers and washable glasses. Even the legislature has moved to this by procuring aluminum water bottles. It is possible. Also, the 90% post-consumer recycled content requirement for bottles at state agencies includes exceptions. These include bottles that are purchased for emergencies, water bottles sold at prison canteens, or given to pregnant women in prison according to existing law. In addition, SB 14 requires state agencies to take more measures to reduce waste and recycle plastic and organic material as part of their integrated waste management plans. Right now, each agency is responsible for developing an integrated waste management plan to divert 50% of the waste generated at state facilities from landfills. SB 14 pushes state agencies to chart a course to move away from single-use plastic foodware entirely, to encourage better education for sorting waste at state facilities, and to better ensure that plastic and organic material leaving state facilities actually gets recycled once it leaves the state building. With me today, I have Doug Kobold from California Product Stewardship Council and Mark Aprea from Republic Services.
Welcome, gentlemen. Please state your name again for the record. You'll have 2 minutes each.
Good morning. I am Doug Kobold. No, that's on. Okay. Thank you. Good morning. I'm Doug Kobold, Executive Director for the California Product Stewardship Council. I'm also the Vice Chair of the SB 54 Producer Plastic Packaging Reduction Act Advisory Board. I am also the Treasurer of the California Resource Recovery Association. I wanted to step back for just 1 second and talk briefly about SB 54 because SB 54 does tackle reuse and source reduction. That's what we're also talking about here. What the senator is trying to attempt to do is to reduce the amount of waste that's actually being generated to begin with. But unfortunately, SB 54 does not touch on soda bottles and water bottles. Those are exempt in SB 54 because they have a California redemption value provision to them. So they are not actually being addressed in SB 54. So I really appreciate the senator's efforts to bring this forward to try and reduce this in a different way. SB 14 encourages source reduction by encouraging refill stations. An example, the Cal EPA building, just a few blocks away, I go there all the time. There is not an publicly accessible refill station, which is unfortunate. I'd love to see that. I complain about it all the time. It encourages the alternatives, as the senator mentioned, about aluminum cans or glass bottles, or even more importantly, reusables. Reusables are the one key to reducing the amount of plastic waste that's generated by all of us. The aluminum can's been around a long time. If you look at soda, soda has been was marketed in glass bottles first, then it went to aluminum cans, then to plastic, but it's still being marketed in aluminum cans. And the reality is that the cost for either, in a soda, for example, the cost is the same, whether it is a 12-ounce plastic bottle or a 12-ounce can. There is no price difference from aluminum versus plastic. Also, by pulling out the plastic bottles and encouraging more post-consumer content, you're going to help the MRFs to try and market better material for bottle-to-bottle recycling because they get paid more for a grade A bale over a grade B bale, which is typically your clamshells and plastic bottles mixed together. I did a quick search on the internet real quick to find out Pepsi sold at Walmart. You can get an 8-pack, 12-ounce bottles in plastic for $8.77, but a 12-pack of 12-ounce cans, aluminum cans, is $4.90. It's almost half the price. So the aluminum cost is not as a significant difference as it is has been exclaimed. Also, for vending machines, typically you're paying $2. So even if there is a small cost differential between aluminum and plastic, it's not going to be seen in the vending machines. The last thing I'd like to say is that, sorry, my apologies. Having the state agencies leading, as the senator mentioned, in the circular economy, this is one step closer to that circular economy, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I'm Mark Aprea with Capital Advocacy here on behalf of our client, Republic Services. First, we'd like to thank Senator Blakespear for introducing this measure and for presenting it before you today. As a solid waste service provider, Republic Services relies on the kinds of incentives that are provided for in this bill to ensure that recycling programs are successful. SB 14 provides that, or requires rather, that single-use plastic bottles have 90% post-consumer recycled content. This will help create a market for recycled products and will provide a market and an incentive for the collection and processing of these post-consumer plastic goods. Secondly, in addition to setting recycling goals, SB 14 also requires state agencies to take more measures to reduce waste and recycled plastic and organic material as part of their integrated waste management plans. As the legislature and the governor create public policies for the state to follow, this is an opportunity for the state buildings and state facilities to take the lead in moving forward with these recycling goals and these recycling processes. For these reasons, we urge your aye vote.
Thank you very much. Are there any individuals in the hearing room who want to step forward and register support for the bill? Please state your name and affiliation and position on the bill.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. John Moffett on behalf of Waste Management in support.
Good morning, Chair and Committee. Noam Elroy on behalf of the California Compost Coalition, Rethink Waste, and CR&R Environmental Services, all in support.
Thank you. Are there any principal witnesses in opposition to the bill? Please come forward. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Welcome. Please state your name for the record again. You'll have 2 minutes each.
Thank you very much. Dennis Albiani on behalf of the American Beverage Association. We appreciate the author's commitment to the environment. They've also her commitment to the bill and have met with the staff and those over time and worked on this. Which want to point out that California has an extensive recycling system. 76% in the last audit of plastic beverages containers were recycled and brought back through the system. That is almost statistically the same amount as aluminum. So I think there's our system is very good, but it can get better. And that's where ABA wants to focus attention going forward, is how do we get all these, every bottle back. And so it's currently, every bottle has a requirement of 25% recycled content, and that moves up to 50% in 2030. That bill and that requirement has worked. We now source recycled PET from all over the world because we're pulling it in to meet the standards and the sustainability requirements, as well as the goals of many entities on to have more recycled content. This creates a specific state bottle, and that's going to require DGS, and this is the Government Organization Committee, to review every single contract. Those are contracts not only for state vending machines, but those are cafes that are in state buildings that are owned by small business entities. That includes fairs. It includes colleges. It includes all those requirements of every state facility. It could also be folks that work out in the, like Caltrans, out in the roads, that they have a vending machine in their office. Those kinds of contracts need to all be reviewed. And finally, that will create additional costs. And finally, it will also create logistical challenges because obviously California just doesn't produce for California. We produce for other states, and other states produce for California. And you can imagine having to make sure that the state bottle specific is the only one in there. So with that, we would love to get that provision as the only provision in the bill that we are concerned about. And if that was removed, we'd remove our opposition. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth Esquivel with the California Manufacturers and Technology Association. We also want to thank the author and her staff for the ongoing conversations and the dialogues regarding our concerns. Well, we fully support California's sustainability goals and the author's intent. However, this bill, as it's currently written, would set unrealistic mandates that do not align with manufacturing capabilities. It would introduce costly operation challenges for manufacturers as well. I think it's also important to acknowledge that high-quality recycled plastic is in short supply, and we cannot meet the demand this bill would create in the required time frame. Forcing a 90% recycled content threshold risk driving up production cost, disruption in operations, and it would also increase costs for consumers, including students, government employees, and visitors. We must also take note that the impact this would have on small and mid-sized manufacturers who may not be able to absorb the cost and compliance burdens. And we instead urge the legislature to focus on expanding and modernizing recycling collection infrastructure that's where we will see the most significant and meaningful impact. Thank you.
Thank you both for your testimony. Are there any individuals who want to register opposition to the bill? Step forward, state your name, affiliation, and position. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members, Eloy Garcia for the International Bottled Water Association in opposition.
Thank you. Any other individuals want to register opposition to the bill? Seeing no one come forward, we'll bring it back to the committee. Senator Jones.
I think one simple question and then a thought maybe. On the 90% post-consumer product, how did we come to that number, and is it hard and fast? Is it malleable at this point in time? Recognizing the witnesses in opposition saying that we're moving to 50% already.
Yeah, it's definitely not fixed. I appreciate the question. We have been, so first of all, the opposition has come in late. I think you may have noticed that there was no registered opposition before this. And so yesterday I did have a meeting with them, and unfortunately, I think at this point they're trying to kill the bill in this committee. They're not wanting to go down to 80%, 70%, 50%, or go to the goals that are established already earlier. There are a lot of different potentials, and I think sometimes negotiation is, you don't want to negotiate against yourself, so you think we're just going to stick with this bill needs to die. So, I guess I would say that 90%, because there are so many products that already say 100% recycled, and there are so many alternatives to plastic, and it has so many exclusions. It excludes milk, excludes 100% fruit juice, excludes emergencies, excludes prisons, excludes canteens. It actually is narrower than it seems. And so I honestly would expect that percentage to come down. So I don't think it would, if it comes through this committee, that it will be at 90% when it comes to the floor of the Senate. But at this point, that was what we were starting with. And it does seem like it is possible given how many products are actually sold with 100% recycled. So thank you.
Mr. Chair, if you wouldn't mind indulging me just a bit and maybe give the opposition an opportunity to respond on the late opposition comment, because our analysis has 3 or 4 registered opposition, and I just don't want that to go left unaddressed if there's some people that turned it in timely and other people were late. I don't know.
Yeah, we met with the consultant last, I believe it was Wednesday, and turned in our opposition at that on Wednesday. It did grow from there. A couple other people added on, and so we had that, and we have been meeting with Ms. Blakespear's staff for maybe the greater part, trying to figure out what would be the opportunity on that provision and whether it would come out or not. And so we've had a few meetings with them prior to this. And so then obviously the time came and we needed to get the letter in.
Okay, so my understanding, Mr. Chair, is that both things are true. There was some timely opposition and some late opposition. Is that?
That sounds accurate.
I'm sorry?
That sounds accurate.
All right, great. Thank you.
Yeah,
Just wanted
and
to
I
clarify
think, fundamentally, at this point in material, so there's opposition in the record, and I think the committee understands the points that have been raised by the opposition. I bring it back to the committee for other questions or direction. Vice Chair Valladares.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can definitely appreciate the author's commitment to reducing waste in California, and I share that same goal. However, I do have concerns on how this bill might impact affordability, equity, and the state's ability to serve our public, especially in our time of a very serious budget constraints. So I do have some questions, I suppose, for the key witnesses in support. I don't know if they wanted to step forward. So, given the state's multi-billion-dollar deficit that we're facing, do we have a projected cost increase per contract for agencies on that might affect service delivery, particularly in food service for students, for state workers, and I originally thought incarcerated individuals, but I understand that they're excluded. Our prisons are excluded. Is that? Can you address that?
All right, 1 second, Senator. Who is the question directed to?
To the witness. What was your name, sir?
Doug Kobold.
Doug,
Yeah.
Doug, to our witness in testimony in support of the bill.
All right, Mr. Cole, feel free to respond.
Senator, I can't answer the question on the amount of the contracts that you're asking for as far as the state. What I can tell you is certainly when you look at the universities, there are already universities that are starting to switch to reusables within the cafeterias in those spaces. But then when you look at the vending machines, that's why I brought up the comment about the vending machines. When you go to purchase water, soda, anything in those vending machines, they're about $2. But when you go to purchase these same products in the grocery stores, they're less than $1. There's quite a bit of markup. And that's why I stressed also the difference in the cost of, say, an aluminum container versus a plastic container. We're not going to see a significant increase in the cost of bottling these products, and therefore it should be reasonable to assume that the amount of cost or the price of the product in the vending machine at $2 is going to definitely cover that cost, and so the students should not see an increase. Therefore, so I would say we're not going to see a significant increase in the amount to the consumer, whether that is the university through vending machines or in the stores.
I've ran a business, and anytime I have to change something, whether it's a service or a product, you incur more cost. Like, that's just the reality. And it does make me nervous that, whether you're a student, whether you're a state worker, that those, maybe it's a few pennies, maybe it's $1, but they add up, right? And they add up out of our monthly budgets. And that concerns me very much. The other thing I'd like to know is, has there ever been an analysis of the proposed alternatives? I mean, if we're going to be moving to glass or to aluminum, is there potential for environmental harm with those alternatives down the road that we're unaware of?
Absolutely, and there have not been a lot here within the states, but if you look in Canada where they are already removing some of these products from the shelves and going toward the more environmentally friendly alternatives, plastic is not the most environmentally friendly alternative because of all the leaching, the microplastics, those concerns that have been raised more and more as we hear more and more about the health impacts of plastics in our environment and in our bodies. But then also on top of that, the EU is already banning most of these types of products. And so California is probably the leading state in the nation trying to follow the lead of Canada and also the EU when it comes to these wasteful products and other alternatives that are out there.
And if I may ask the opposition to weigh in terms of costs and any other thing you may want to bring up, I'd appreciate that.
Is that sure. Mr. Albiani? All right. Assuming it is, go ahead, state your name. Please feel free to respond.
Thank you, Dennis Albiani, on behalf of American Beverage Association. There's actually been quite a bit of review over the alternatives as well as all the different bottling opportunities, whether it's glass, aluminum, or plastic. And again, American Beverage Association, we put our beverages in all those different containers, and it really comes down to what the need is. But when it comes to, for instance, CO2, plastic beverage bottle requires, they can be hauled and they get, compressed down to nothing, baled, and then reconstituted, have a much lower CO2 than glass or aluminum. When you look at a life cycle analysis, that has been well documented, and we could do that. When you travel with glass, you have to carry it both ways, full, and it's very heavy. And so, and heavy takes more weight and more fuels and those kind of things. Also, there's places where it's appropriate, or it may not be appropriate. You may not want glass, I said, at a fairgrounds that can be used essentially as a weapon, for lack of a better term, if it was, full and used. So there's times when you would want to use one of the different alternatives. And so with that, those are some of the issues, and obviously consumers prefer the ability to also refasten and those things. So there's a plethora of reasons of why you would use the various different options. But yes, plastic has a very good CO2 profile. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Would you like additional?
Mr. Chair, Senator Valadares, if I may ask through the chair, respond to through the chair. Your question is appropriate to ask about the cost, but I think you're only looking at half of the equation. I would also ask that you consider the cost of your solid waste and recycling services. To the extent that there is a robust market for recycled plastic, that will reduce the cost of your solid waste bill, whether you are at a residence or in a business environment. And so I believe that as we look at these costs, we ought to look not just at the cost of the manufacturing of the product, but what is the cost for you, the consumer, to recycle the product that you're disposing of. And I think that looking at both of those will get you to the right number.
All right, thank you. I think we'll move on. Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Senator. Does that conclude your questions? Senator Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question for anyone who can answer it. When was the last time the percentage was increased?
Of the recycling?
Of the percentage of plastic?
Oh, just this year. It went up from 15% to 25% in the mandate.
Albiani, state your name.
Oh, sorry.
Before you respond. Go ahead.
Thank
State
you,
your name and
Chairman. Dennis Albiani, on behalf of American Beverage Association. The requirements were increased this year, so it went from 15% to 25%. It'll go to 50% in 2030, and that's the minimum requirement. And so, and then some have marketing opportunities that are higher or more than that, but it's continuing to go up. But what we've seen is as it worked, the market for rPET, recycled PET, has increased, and in fact we're pulling in material from all over the world.
So I had an opportunity to speak, although briefly, with the author. First of all, I want to commend the author. I think that your work in the field of environmental, not only environmental justice, but environmental protection is probably one of the best in the Senate. And I think you continue to work to, get us across the line of bettering. And so I want to certainly commend you for all of your efforts with that. And I think all of us of Californians are beneficial for all of your work. And Mr. Aprea, who I've also known for many years since I was first here, I do know your commitment in terms of waste. It's been since I was here last in 2006, so we're talking about almost 20 years. So I know you have a tremendous commitment to increasing and getting us where we need to be. However, today I'm going to vote no on this item, although I do reserve the right to change as we go through, and if changes are made, I'm certainly open to doing that on the floor. However, I just want to point out what my concern is. In my district, I have the Pepsi I have the Pepsi bottling manufacturing location in my district in Carson, California. And so the reason why I asked the question, when was this last done? When you have companies, and I have a consistent record of saying this and doing this, when I was on GO 20 years ago, when we already have businesses that make the adjustment to go from 15 to 25 to now 20, 30, 50%, a business doesn't decide that overnight. That's a major change. I'd invite any of you to come to tours in my district to see a bottling plant. You know, when you're talking about the contents and the size and the machines that move everything around, it's not just, oh, I want to change it from 50 to 76 now. It's a major impact to that business. And I've been fighting to keep that business in my district for years now. And so my concern is that change of requirement to that amount when we already have in place an increase to get us better. Certainly not where we would ultimately want to be, but certainly better. I do want to point out, though, some positives of the bill that I support. In previous acts, they require agencies to develop and adopt a waste management plan to reduce solid waste, reuse materials whenever possible, recycle materials, and so on. I can tell you, in my new apartment I just moved into, they gave me the little bucket, you know, that you're supposed to use. So I commend the many years of work that you've done to get us to doing better, and I support us getting better. I just don't know, with in place the businesses already having made this initial adjustment for 2030, to have them change again would just come at such cost, and some may not be able to survive, frankly, because to have one particular bottle for California and something different for every place else, that's why, in my opinion, we're losing a lot of businesses, because for them to do things only for California, they're getting to the point, fine, you can have California, and they're moving every place else. So I reserve the right to reconsider as you work through the process, but I just wanted you to know a real live example in my district where we're actually doing bottling, and this has a significant impact. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Senator. Are there any other comments or questions from members? Is there a motion?
May I close, Chair?
Yes, please feel free.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the comments, Senator Richardson, and I appreciate the witnesses and the opposition. There are just a couple level-setting statements I want to make. So this doesn't ban plastic. It creates a market for recycled plastic. So we're trying to have the state, basically state agencies need to walk the talk. And so when we say we want our state agencies to have at least one water refilling station, you know, that's something that they all should have. And the fact that Cal EPA doesn't have that is a problem, along with other problems. So we're trying to create a market for recycled plastic. There is an enormous amount of plastic to recycle. So this bill is aimed at that. It's also important just to say that there's no environmental analysis a serious environmental analysis that thinks of plastic as a environmentally positive choice. So, you know, while we can try to spin the facts to suggest that plastic is a fossil fuel. It comes from digging up the ground. It's extractive. The fossil fuel industry is the plastics industry. So to the extent we have other alternatives, aluminum is infinitely recyclable. So to the extent we have other alternatives, if you pay attention to your life, you know that you're awash in plastic, and you will still continue to be, even if we do make some of these shifts, because so much of our life does come to us in plastic. So as we try to get on top of that, recognizing the harms plastic causes and the places where we can make changes, that's ultimately what the aim of this bill is to say we could do better with our state agencies. There are several different areas, which I'm really happy Senator Richardson mentioned, because there are other parts of the bill that aren't just that one that are very important. And ultimately, we should get out ahead of the statewide goals and show what is possible in terms of sustainability and recycling. So, and creating a market for more plastic, higher plastic recycling content, I think, is a really important goal. So with that, I would respectfully ask for your aye vote, and also just to say again that I do expect this bill to change as it goes through the process, and that I would hope that my colleagues would give me the courtesy to continue working on the bill. So thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Senator. All right. Thank you. Senator Smallwood Cuevas moves the bill. Please call the roll.
Item 1, SB 14, motion is due pass as amended to environmental quality. Padilla.
Aye.
Padilla, aye. Valdez. No. Valdez, no. Archuleta. Ashby. Blakespear. Aye. Blakespear, aye. Cervantes. Cervantes, aye. Dally. Hurtado. Jones. Ochoa Bogue. Richardson.
No.
Richardson, no. Rubio. Smallwood Cuevas. Smallwood Cuevas, aye. Wahab. Weber Pearson.
All right, thank you. We'll put that item on call. Thank you, Senator. Thank you, everyone, for your testimony. I think we have, did I see Senator Stern? Oh, Senator Bettis is